Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. Anthony Joshua eventually knocks out Robert Helenius in 7 rounds. An enormous right hand over the top. It was a double jab. I think jab to the body and jab to the head, or was it the other way around? And then brought the right hand over the top. Helenius was on the ropes. The punch landed flush, knocked Helenius onto his side, and the referee stopped the fight instantly. But to be honest with you, as picturesque as the knockout was, and no doubt it will be repeated on highlight reels, this was not a good performance by Joshua. For the first time, I'm beginning to think that maybe the sort of naysayers were right. We have seen the best of Joshua, because even though before the fight I thought to myself, and I said this in my preview, I don't mind if it's a boring fight, and I don't mind if Joshua, doesn't look great. I want to see evidence of something that, of things he's been doing with Derrick James in the gym. And to be honest with you, he didn't look great. He looked poor, as far as I could see. He looked like someone who is trying to learn a style that just doesn't suit him. And he still doesn't look to me like he's confident. He looks like he's faking it almost. I hate saying this because I quite like Joshua. I've enjoyed his career, and I think he's one of those guys who if you look at his record, he's never ducked anyone ever, and I respect that. Even if a fighter isn't that great, if they never duck anyone and they take on all comers, whether they've got a belt or not, I respect that. I don't respect people that duck, that hold belts hostage, so to speak. You know what I'm talking about. Even if they're superior fighters, I don't respect them as much as I do the guys that will take anyone on. So I like Joshua, but I have to say this. I don't see it. I just don't see it. And the idea that he's going to go in with Deontay Wilder next January, that's going to be his next fight, I think is a mistake. I think it was Andy Lee said post-fight, he said Josh, or was it? No, it might have been. It might have been Andy Lee. I can't remember. One of the commentators said, "Look, this guy needs another couple of fights before he takes on Deontay Wilder." And he needs them because if he is working on stuff with Derrick James, it's perfectly feasible that he's not going to look great yet anyway, because of the two, he's only had 2 fights with James. And that's this year. He only hooked up with James this year. It takes 4 or 5 fights and probably a couple of years to gel with a trainer. And certainly to gain that sort of rapport or synergy, whatever you want to call it, to where mentally, psychologically, the trainer is having some sort of positive effect on you. I mean, I'm not talking about cheerleaders here, because that's a different thing. I'm talking about someone instilling a real self-belief, a genuine self-belief into a fighter, not just blowing smoke up his arse. And that takes time. Stylistically, I didn't really see great deal of difference in this Joshua and the last Joshua against Jermaine Franklin. Look, Helenius, in his last major fight, which was against Wilder, he got flattened in a round because he went straight at Wilder, he brought it to him, and then he just got nailed with a terrific punch. And he didn't take a dive. Let's cut that crap out straight away, right? All this bullshit about how he took a dive and it was a fix and all this crap. Go back to, I don't know, watching espionage thrillers, or go back to some conspiracy theory site. He didn't take a dive. He got flattened by a huge right hand, all right? And if you can't believe your own eyes, what can you believe? Right? But in this fight, he might have been better off doing that, actually going straight at Joshua and, trying to knock him out early. But instead, he settled down to a sort of jab, trying to jab. I've never liked Helenius' style, the way he extends his hands. He leaves huge gaps both between his hands and between the range between the hands and his chin. But he was, prodding and poking and fencing, and he was being crafty. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that he didn't really maintain it. And certainly when it got to the middle rounds, or let's say rounds 5, 6, something like that, 5, 6, 7, I wanted him to really start putting it on Joshua, because he was letting Joshua, instead of gradually going through the gears and mixing in the sort of craftiness with a little bit of pressure, a little bit of maybe even a gamble here and there. Instead, he was kind of just standing back and trying to counterpunch a bit too much, but it was all a bit safety first, too much safety first stuff. He didn't look like he was flagging at all, Helenius. After all, he had a full camp for his last fight, and he only had that fight a week ago. But he was letting Joshua come back into the fight when Joshua early on looked like he didn't really know exactly what he should be doing. He was second guessing himself again. I mean, all this comes from a lack of confidence. People talk about him being gun shy. There may be some truth to that. But I think it's more a case with Joshua of he overthinks everything. And his best years, even though he ended up getting knocked out by Andy Ruiz, was when he was a cavalier, let it all hang out, go forward, excite the crowd. I'm going to let my hands go. I'm going to emphasize my power, try to accentuate my power. Joshua's always had quite underrated boxing skills. He's not a bum when it comes to his skills. He has a good jab, and his footwork's very good. He holds his shape well. But when he's in there, certainly tonight, it just didn't seem to be natural. It didn't look natural. It didn't feel natural watching him. Now, he did show a few good things. He did hold his shape well at times. He did jab well at times. But it's like he was holding back, like he was saying, I want to do this, but in the gym we did this, so I've got to keep doing this. I've got to keep doing, I want to. And between rounds, he was sort of, he wasn't just listening. He was talking to James, almost like, "What do you mean? No, what are you saying? What do you? Okay, do you want this? Do you want that?" This has always been a problem with Joshua. He doesn't. He wants to hear exactly what he's got to do. Almost down to the minutiae of it. Otherwise, he starts second guessing himself. Otherwise, he starts doubting himself. And that's the impression I got for most of this fight. I feel Helenius had a chance here. After 4 rounds, 5 rounds, he should have. Well, after 3 rounds, he should have started to go through the gears, get a bit more cavalier, a little bit more front-footed. He might have got knocked out, because Joshua was jabbing well to the body, and obviously has power. And if he hits you clean, you're going to go. But he got knocked out anyway, Helenius. So I think he'll look back on this and say, I wish I'd gone for it more after about 4 rounds, 5 rounds. But, he's a tricky guy, Helenius. He ain't a bad fighter. I mean, he can be crafty. He's quite a crafty little sod, or big sod. But I think he didn't do as much as he'll look back and he'll think he should have done. After about 3, 4, 5 rounds, he should have really started. I'm almost tempted to say toy with Joshua. That is to say, because Joshua is there for the taking psychologically. And if Helenius had been a bit more cavalier, a bit more front-footed, and upped his work rate a bit early on, after say 3, 4 rounds, I think he could have really asked some questions of Joshua. Joshua had some slight swellings underneath the eyes as well. So the jab from Helenius was definitely getting through. In fact, one of his eyes, I think it was, I can't remember which one. Maybe his right eye, I don't know. It was one or the other. After only a couple of rounds, you could see that there was some discoloration under one of his eyes. But yeah, I wasn't impressed at all. I thought it was a. Well, I can't even find the word. I mean, obviously it was unimpressive, but it was one of those. it was like a lost performance. Like he didn't really know what he was doing. Like he didn't really know what he should have been doing, and it was just no. I'm sorry, but is he 33 now, Joshua? I'm beginning to think that the doom-laden ones were right and his best years are behind him. And if he wants to stay dedicated and keep fighting regularly, because he talked about, I want to fight another 2 times this year, he was saying. Well, I don't think that's a bad idea. I think it's a good idea. But if you've, what I would do is I would say, forget about this Deontay Wilder fight. Forget it, right? I'll have that in a year's time. Right? The only advantage is that Wilder's had less than a round against Helenius since he got beaten up by Fury. And when they get into the ring, it's going to be, nigh on 2 years since he's had any kind of a real fight. And he's no spring chicken himself. He's older than Joshua. But Joshua, I would like to see him as, I think it was Barry Jones, actually, not Andy Lee, who said, I want to see him have another 2 fights. I agree. I absolutely agree. He should have another 2 fights, at least another 2 fights, preferably 3 with Derrick James, just to see if that partnership is working fully. And if James, his job is to deconstruct Joshua, put him back together. Not to say he completely undoes his natural abilities. That's not what it's about. You build on, you deconstruct it in order to find out what you were good at, and then you put them back together and you hone it and you refine it. And I'm talking psychologically as well as his physical style, his fighting style. But he's going to need more fights to do that, Joshua. More fights. And if he goes in with Deontay Wilder in January, as inactive as Wilder is, I think that's an extremely dangerous fight for Joshua. Extremely dangerous. So yeah, that's my spiel. Let me know what you think. Comments below. I was disappointed, to be honest, but what you? What do you think of Joshua? Do you think he's finished? Do you think he can come back again? And well, he won after all. He did score an excellent highlight reel knockout. Let me know what you think. Comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. That would be a massive help, and spread the word about Joe Stunner Boxing. Looking forward to your comments, and bye for now.